Hello friends, I am Dr. Tejas Limaye. I am a clinical nutritionist and certified diabetes educator. I have also done my certification in pump training, so I am a certified pump trainer too, and I especially look after type 1 diabetic patients in KEM Hospital Pune, and as I work as a consultant nutritionist in Aditya Birla Hospital, Chinchwad. So today we will be basically discussing about a very important tool in management of diabetes, and that's called carbohydrate counting. So if you know about this tool, you will be able to manage diabetes better, and very easily you can control the major factor which affects your blood sugar levels. So let's see, there are various factors which affect blood sugar, starting from your activity levels, hormonal changes in the body, stress levels, some medications as well as illness. Along with these factors, food is the major factor which affects your blood sugar control, and especially carbs or carbohydrates in the food are very important as far as the impact on blood sugar level is concerned. So that is why the topic carbohydrate counting. And why we are just talking about carbs? Because you must be knowing that food contains three major components: carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Then why we are so worried about carbohydrates? Why not about fats and proteins? And the reason is carbohydrates are converted to glucose or sugar faster than fats and proteins. So that is why we need to consider carbohydrates in the meal and then take into the account the content of carbs in a particular meal and adjust the insulin dose accordingly. That is why this carbohydrate counting is a very important tool when the patient is on MDI or multiple daily injections. So especially we are talking about type 1 diabetes first, then we will also see how carbohydrate counting is applied to type 2 diabetes. Okay. So here you will be able to see that carbohydrates are covered by the bolus dose in multiple daily injections, and fats and proteins are covered by your basal dose in your MDI regime. Now we will discuss the history of carbohydrate counting in brief, and carb counting has been around since 1920s. So the trial DCCT has used carbohydrate counting as a tool to teach the patients about counting carbohydrates in the diet and managing their blood sugar levels according to the content of carbs in the meal. So it was used previously as a means to restrict carbs in the diet, but now the approach called DAFNE, dose adjustment for normal eating, has been practiced, where the patient is allowed to eat the normal food or normal food patterns, and then carbohydrates from that particular meal are counted and insulin dose is adjusted accordingly. So there are no more restrictions as such, because type 1 diabetic kids are usually they are smaller, so restrictions won't work for them, and especially for them such approach of carbohydrate counting has been found to be very beneficial. But before we begin, it is very important to get the basals right, because we have already seen that carbohydrate counting is suited for MDI, and basal dose of insulin is the major part of any MDI regime, and basal takes care of fats and proteins. So if your basal dose is correct, then we are sure that our carbohydrate counting and adjusting the bolus dose will work very well. About next, what is carbohydrate counting? Here we will check the basic theme of carbohydrate counting, where we just estimate the carb content of the food first and then we adjust the insulin dose accordingly. So you must be aware of this now, but let's talk about it in details. And before we begin, we must know the sources of carbohydrates in the diet, because we want to measure carbs, we want to count the carbs, we must know the sources of carbohydrates in the food. So this slide will explain you different sources of carbohydrates in the meal, and let me tell you, all fruits, all dry fruits, all juices, so any derivative of fruit will contain carbohydrates. Next, all cereals, grains and their products, even millets, they are rich in carbohydrates. Thirdly, all pulses, legumes, lentils, dals, they also are a major source of carbohydrates. We generally know them as protein rich food, but they also contain carbohydrates. All roots and tubers like potato, tapioca, sago, beetroot, sweet potato, all these roots and tubers are rich in starch, and that is why they are rich in carbohydrates. All milk and milk products. Milk contains a sugar called lactose. So that's a sugar, that means carbohydrates. And all sweets, because sweets are added with simple carbohydrates like sugar, jaggery, that is why sweets are also a major source of carbohydrates in the diet. Then let's see which are the exceptions, or which foods won't contain much of carbohydrates, and we can generally skip these foods while we are counting the carbs. So especially all non-veg foods, starting from eggs, chicken, fish, mutton, all these non-veg foods are rich sources of fats and proteins. That is why they will not be counted in carbohydrate counting. Similarly, all nuts and oil seeds, they contain very little carbohydrates, so we can just skip them. And lastly, all salads. So salads also contain some carbs, but very little amount of carbs or less number of carbs, so we can generally skip them while we count the carbs. So now we know the sources of carbohydrates. We also should learn one more important concept when we are talking about carbs in the diet, and that concept is called glycemic index and glycemic load of the food. So glycemic index is a scale that ranks carbohydrates in the meal by how much they raise blood sugar level compared to a reference food, and reference food is generally glucose. So compared to glucose, how fast or how rapidly a particular food increases your sugar level is called your glycemic index, and it is measured from the scale of 0 to 100. More the number, more is the glycemic index and more the impact on sugar. Similarly, glycemic load is a concept where you multiply glycemic index by the number of carbohydrates in that particular food, and it has been seen that rather than glycemic index, glycemic load is more beneficial because it also accounts for number of carbs. So again, carbohydrate counting, and it has been seen that low GI diet or low glycemic index diet leads to slower absorption of carbohydrates, and it reduces postprandial glycemia especially, and it leads to improved HbA1c or improvisation in diabetes control. We will take some examples and then you will know why glycemic load is more important than glycemic index, because here if you could see, I will take an example. For example, pizza. So pizza is rich in cheese. Though it has bread, it is rich in cheese and fats. That is why glycemic load of pizza is low. You can see it in green zone. But if you see its glycemic load, it's 13. So glycemic load of more than 10 is considered higher. So pizza, though it is good according to glycemic index scale, it may not be good as per glycemic load scale. That is why it's important to know glycemic load of the food rather than just looking at the glycemic index. Second example I would like to take is about watermelon. Watermelon has glycemic index of about 72, which is quite high, and glycemic index is not a good indicator, as I said, because watermelon has lot of water in it, and if we just count number of carbs in it, the glycemic loads comes to about somewhere around 8. So 8 is low glycemic load food, comes in the green zone, and that is why though watermelon has got high glycemic index, it may not impact your blood sugar levels much because the total glycemic load is lower. So this is how we use the concepts of glycemic index and glycemic load. So let's begin with actual carbohydrate counting, because even for counting glycemic load we need to count the carbs in the food, and the step 2 in carb counting is estimate the content of carbs in the food using different tools. So how can you do that? There are different methods, but before we see the methods, we must be aware about the problems, especially in India. So Indian foods are very rich in carbs. Most of the Indian diets or different meals in different parts of India are more than 70% carbs. So very rich in carbs need to account for all carbs. So if you can see this picture, you will be able to realize that meals are really very dense in carbs and very little amount of proteins are taken in the meal, or little amount of fibers are taken in the meal. That's one major problem or major consideration when it comes to Indian diets. Secondly, the serving size is not consistent. So if we are talking about one roti might be like your palm size, or maybe a plate size. So it varies differently, and you have to account for that when you count for carbohydrates in that particular food. Even sizes of different katoris or different spoons are entirely very varied, so we cannot rely on different measures as far as these serving sizes are concerned. Thirdly, carbohydrate content of many ready-to-eat foods are not available in India, so especially packaged foods, and food labels are not precisely designed, or people are not able to read those food labels. That's one of the major problems when it comes to packaged food and the carb content in those foods. So considering these problems, we'll go ahead and we will see how to tackle with them later. But there are different methods of estimating carbohydrates in the food. Firstly, we can use rough estimates of portion like feast size, thumb size, or your palm size. So there are different ways to do it. There are different carb counting books available, or there are lists available. There are different tables available to whom you can refer and then know the carb content of that particular meal. There are measuring cups and spoons available which are of standard size. So you must have seen these red colored bowls and spoons. So these are standard bowls or standard spoons wherein you can ensure that yes, this much bowl contains this much carbs. There are different food labels. As I said, many people are not able to read them, but nutritionists or healthcare professionals should at least learn and explain to the patients how can we read these labels and know the carbohydrate content in that particular packaged food. Lastly, there are now weighing scales available for carbohydrate counting, wherein you just need to feed the data per 100 gram of that food, and the weighing scale just weighs that particular food and calculates the carbohydrate content for that particular weight. For example, if I enter carbohydrate content of 100 gram of apple, and if I keep an apple on the scale will measure the exact weight of an apple, and depending on carb content of 100 grams of apple, it will give me the carb content of that particular apple, because apple can be smaller and bigger and carbohydrate content can vary to a great extent. So the scales are very precise method, but they are not accessible to all. So we need to also rely on lists and tables for counting carbohydrates in the food. Now let's go to the step 3. Step 3 is to calculate insulin dose required for particular amount of carbohydrates in the food. I will take an example so that it will be easier for you to understand, and for that we need to first calculate one ratio called as IC ratio. IC ratio is insulin to carbohydrate ratio, and it is the number of carbohydrates in grams covered by 1 unit of insulin. So it's easy. We will calculate. There is a formula for it, and simple formula, mostly widely used formula is divide 500 by total daily dose. This formula may vary for kids and adults, but yes, this is the standard one, and in general adult population we can use this formula. So TDD is total daily dose. You have to first calculate total number of units of insulin that person is taking. So if we take an example, that insulin regime, a person is on insulin regime like 4 units of short acting insulin or bolus insulin before breakfast, 4 units before lunch, 4 before dinner, and 13 units of basal. So remember, you also need to add up basal dose when you are calculating total daily dose. So here your total daily dose comes to about 25 units, and depending on our formula like 500 by total daily dose divided by total daily dose, you will get IC ratio as 500 by 25, that's 20. And how will you interpret this? This means for 20 grams of carbs in your food, that person will require 1 unit of insulin. As simple as that. So let's go to the next slide and we will take an example of a particular food. So let's assume that this person will be taking such a kind of breakfast like 2 idlis, 1 katori of or half a katori of sambar and 1 apple. So can you guess the carb content? If you can guess, that's quite well, but for that I think first you need to take help of some lists, and then you will be able to guess it or judge it on your own once you are well versed with the list. So if we can see the carb content, you will realize that yes, half a katori of sambar will give 15 grams of carbs, apple again 15 grams, and 2 idlis, if they are small in size, they will give you total 30 grams of carbs. If you add up, Total comes to about 30 plus 15 plus 15, that is somewhere around 60 grams of carbs. And let's calculate insulin dose for this meal, and for that you will have to divide your total number of carbs by your IC ratio, and you remember our IC ratio was 20. So if you divide 60 by 20, you will calculate 3 units as a insulin requirement of this particular meal for the person on given insulin regime. So this is how we calculate insulin required for a particular meal based on carbs in the meal. Fourth step is to consider pre-meal sugars also, because we are just accounting for meal or carbs in the meal through IC ratio. But what if the sugar of a person is on higher side before he takes the food? Sugar will remain high because we have just counted carbs and adjusted dose for the carbs, not for the excess sugar. And we want the sugar to be in better control or optimal level. For that we also need to consider pre-meal sugar levels. Same is the case if sugar is low, sugar will remain low because we have taken insulin for counted carbs and we have not considered the pre-meal sugar. And for that we need to check pre-meal sugar before taking insulin dose and account for that. And there is another formula which comes into the rescue, is called IS ratio, insulin sensitivity factor. This is the dose of insulin required to bring down your blood sugar level to the desired target range. And there is another formula for this, simple formula again, need to calculate TDD once again, or if you already have it, you can use it. And the formula is 1500 divided by total daily dose. Again, this formula can be different depending on the type of insulin the patient is using. If the patient is using short acting insulin, this 1500 is the figure used for formula. If the person is taking analogs or rapid acting insulin, this number may vary from 1700 to 1800 also. So we are considering short acting insulin now, and that's why I have taken 1500 as the figure. Then let's take same example, same insulin regime, 4 unit, 4 unit, 4 unit pre-meals and 13 units of basal. You know the total daily dose is 25, and if we calculate by 1500, the IS ratio comes to about 60. 1500 by 25. Got it? Yes. Now we'll see how to use it. So again, same meal we have considered, wherein we had calculated 60 grams of carbohydrates for this particular meal. We had already calculated insulin dose for this meal, that was 3 units. Now let's see an example depending on blood sugar levels. So if blood sugar of that person is somewhere around 150. 150 is always called as a golden figure, like you have to consider 150 as a good figure or good sugar level. You need not adjust your insulin dose for that. You can just go ahead with 3 units of insulin which was calculated for the meal, right? So required insulin dose is 3 units only, need not increase it or need not decrease it because sugar is in the good range. If sugar levels are high before meal, if sugar level is 330, let's take this an example. What will you do? And your target sugar was somewhere around 150 as we discussed. So you need to subtract your target sugar from your current sugar. And for that you will have to just do 330 minus 150, what comes to about 180 plus 180. So sugar is high or more by 180 mg per dl. And here you need to use your IS ratio which was 60. So need to divide excess of sugar by your IS ratio. So 180 upon 60, answer is 3 units plus 3. Okay. So for excess of sugar, you need to give 3 extra units of insulin along with the insulin used for meal. So these 3 units for meal plus 3 units for sugar. So a person will need to take 6 units of insulin for this much of meal and this much of sugar. Got it? Let's take one more example quickly. And here, what if the sugars are on lower side? If the sugar is low, 60, hypoglycemia, and we need to account for that, we need to reduce the insulin dose, right? By how much? Again, same method, you will have to subtract your target sugar from your current sugar. So 60 minus 150, that comes to about minus 90. So see, whenever there is minus, you need to subtract the dose from meal dose. Okay, and same again, you have to divide your figure by IS ratio, that is minus 90 upon 60, somewhere around 1.5 units. So you have to subtract this 1.5 units from your meal insulin, that's 3 units. So 3 minus 1.5, which comes to about 1.5 units. Easy? Yes. So now quickly I will take another case study and then we will rush through some practical considerations of carbohydrate counting. Let's take case 2. Let's calculate total daily dose quickly. I have calculated for you. So if the person is on 10, 15, 5 units of pre-meals insulin and 20 units of basal, just add it up. You will get 50 units as total daily dose. What's IC and IS ratio? Can you do it on your own now? Yes. So just 500 divided by 50, IC ratio comes to about 10 and IS ratio 1500 by 50, somewhere around 30. How will you interpret this? For 10 grams carbohydrates in the meal, the person will need 1 unit of short acting insulin, and if the sugar is more by 30 mg per dl, the person will need extra 1 unit of insulin or vice versa. Okay, simple. Let's take another meal, and in this meal I will again help you to count carbs, but for that you can also take help from different lists. So here you will be able to see the person is taking major main meal of the day and 1 bhakri, half a katori vegetable, 1 katori rice, half egg or 1 egg sorry, and half a katori kheer. And this is quite heavy meal I guess, and let's calculate carb content of this meal. Egg, you will see there are no carbs. Remember the exceptions? Yes, the egg was in exception list, and egg, that's why I have taken 0 carbs here. Semai kheer, half a katori, 20 carbs, 10, 25 and 45. If you add it up, you will get total carbohydrate count of this meal as somewhere around 100 grams, and insulin dose required for this meal 100 divided by our IC ratio, which was 10 for this case. So 100 by 10, 10 units. Okay. Let's consider the sugars now. What if the sugar is high? You will of course increase the insulin dose. If the sugar is low, you will decrease the insulin dose based on your IS ratio. Okay. Now let's look at some practical considerations of carbohydrate counting, and it's very important, especially when it comes to kids, to only count the carbs that are actually consumed, because kids many times they waste food, they try to eat on their own and they are not able to eat full of that particular meal. So it's very important, especially for very small kids, to count carbs from the food they have actually eaten, and for them we can also give the insulin dose after the meal because their meals are generally unpredictable. Okay, that's one point. Another point is there is a vicious circle, and if you enter into that, that's quite a trouble. So don't overcorrect any insulin dose. If you calculate insulin dose for a particular meal and if the sugars are high, go slow. If the low reading, what happens is generally we see low readings, we eat more. High readings, we give more insulin. Then again sugar goes low. You eat again more if sugar is low, you need to, you feel very hungry. Then again sugar goes high, you give more insulin. So that's a vicious circle. So for that, what you have to do, you have to just stop, think whether you are overcorrecting, why it's happening, why there are blood sugar excursions like high and low. See, such excursions are really worse than high sugar levels for some period of time. So what I would suggest, just avoid these excursions by avoiding extra correction or piling up of insulin if the previous dose was taken just before 2 hours or just before 3 hours of a particular dose. So correct the cause and don't overcorrect yourself. The timing of insulin is also very important as far as the meals are concerned. For quick meals like rice, you can inject before meal, and if you are using pump, you can go for normal bolus in the pump. There are different bolus options in the pump, and when you will be learning about pumps, you will come to know about them, but I am just mentioning the types of bolus to be used here. There are some slow absorbing meals like porridges or ice creams, which are combination of carbs and fats and proteins. So for them you have to inject after eating maybe, or square wave bolus, because your sugar is going to increase slowly and gradually. There are mixed meals also like pizza or fish and chips, like which contain a lot of carbohydrates also and lot of proteins also. So some part of such meals is absorbed quickly and your sugar increases rapidly also quickly, and some amount of sugar it increases after some time because of proteins and fats in that meal. And in such a case you can either have 50% of bolus before meal, 50% of bolus after meal if you are on MDI or injections, and if you are on pump you can go for dual wave bolus. Okay. Yes. Now there are also some important points like insulin stacking. What is insulin stacking or overlapping? That's what I was talking about. Ki don't inject insulin dose if your previous dose was about 2 to 3 hours before your current dose. So, depending on type of insulin, the insulin stays in the body for 3, 4, 5 hours. So, don't pile up the insulin, don't take another dose of insulin before your previous insulin gets over. That's important point. Record keeping is very important. So, if you record your sugars very well and also record the carbohydrate content of the food, you will be able to see whether you are counting the carbs correctly, whether any changes need to be done in your IC ratio, IS ratio. That is why record keeping is very important. And do not react to one off or one very high or one very low sugar immediately. Low sugars you need to correct hypo, but don't adjust insulin dose permanently based on one particular value. Look for trends and then adjust your insulin dose if needed. So these were some practical points. Now we will talk about carbohydrate counting for type 2 diabetes. We have seen carb counting for type 1 so far, those who were on insulin injections. Now we will see how to count carbs for type 2 diabetes, because you all know that not every person with type 2 diabetes is on insulin injections, and even if the person is on insulin injections, he might be producing some insulin in his body because there is some insulin resistance or insulin deficiency. In type 1 there is absolute insulin deficiency, we need to give all insulin from outside. That's not the case with type 2. So we cannot really predict the amount of insulin produced inside, but still we can use carbohydrate counting in type 2 diabetes, and for that what you need to do is to record blood sugar levels before and 120 minutes after each meal of the day for consecutive 3 days. So before after breakfast, before after lunch, before after dinner, for 3 days consecutively. Then record what and how much food is eaten at every meal. Okay, so for breakfast what was eaten, for lunch what was eaten, and for dinner what was eaten, precisely in detailed format you have to mention it, and then adjust the carbs based on BSL difference. So you need to first record the carbohydrate grams in that meal, and then if you see the blood sugar is going very high after taking a particular meal, then lessen or lower the amount of carbohydrates in that particular meal. If the sugar is going low after taking a particular meal, then either according to, in consultation with your doctor, you can adjust your insulin dose or tablet dose, or you can increase the amount of carbs in that particular meal. I will take a quick example so that you will get an idea exactly. So if it is breakfast, see, this was pre and post breakfast sugar for one case. This was pre and post lunch. This was pre and post dinner sugar. Now I have calculated blood sugar excursion or the difference between these two sugars. So you will see difference of 109 between pre and post breakfast, difference of 35 in pre and post lunch, and difference of -20 in pre and post dinner. So how will you interpret this difference, whether this difference is correct or not? So there is a thumb rule. If the difference is between plus and -50, don't worry about it. That means the sugar is going quite well, the meal was okay, good according to the carbohydrate content, and the medicines are going well. But if the difference is going beyond plus and -50, you need to really look into it and adjust the carbohydrates in that particular meal. So what is happening with these three meals? So in breakfast the difference is plus 109, which is quite high. Lunch plus 35, that's okay because plus -150 is fine. And again dinner the difference is okay. But here, yes, for this person I think I need to really manage or really modify his breakfast because it is causing very high sugar levels post breakfast. So what I have calculated now, the carbohydrate content of each meal, and I have realized same method I have used, the method which we have seen for type 1 diabetes, and similarly I have counted carbs for this particular meal, and breakfast the person was taking around 80 grams of carbs, which was really high, and that's the problem with again Indian breakfasts. Our breakfasts are very high in carbs, and as a result the person is getting very high sugars after breakfast. So see, these are red values, so more excursion and more amount of carbohydrates. What we need to do? We need to reduce some amount of carbohydrates from breakfast and recheck again from for next 1 or 2 days to see whether what we have done is working well. So I have reduced 15 grams of carbs here. Why 15? Why didn't I take 10 or 20? Again, there is a thumb rule that in adults, normal weight adults, the blood sugar increases or drops down by around 3 to 4 mg per dl by taking 1 gram of extra carb or reducing 1 gram of carb. So that is why I have reduced 15 grams of carbs. So 15 into 4, this will help the person to reduce his sugar by around 60 to 70 mg per dl if we adjust this many amount of carbs. So this was 109, and if we subtract 70 from this, we'll get somewhere around 30-35 unit difference. So that's acceptable. That is why I have started with 15 grams of carb reduction from this meal, and you can experiment with different carbohydrate grams for different meals depending on blood sugar excursions. And the important thing is you need to complete the loop, like you need to check sugar later after the meal on the next day to check whether what you have done is really working or you need to reduce the amount of carbs further. So that was about carbohydrate counting in type 2 diabetes. You need to just experiment, you need to try different methods, but reducing carbs generally helps post meal blood sugar excursions. So I think I have explained all important details about carbohydrate counting in type 1 as well as type 2 diabetes, and I think you need to just really practice with this, get your hands on this, and you will be really expert in this very important tool which will help your patients to manage their diabetes very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to me patiently, and thanks to all my guides and teachers from KEM Hospital, Pune. Thank you.